think are we ready to start?
Mm-hmm.
So this is bargaining session number 9, I believe, between the city and FPSU, SEIU. And I know that I still owe some information to the union about pay and specific requests for people in your bargaining unit. So I will get that to you ASAP. I did intentionally delay. We have been very swamped. So I will get that to you. And I did mention to Rick that the information that's requested is based on basically taking a look at the people in the units and where they fall based on their years of experience, I think, and what they were hired in at and that kind of thing. What it won't show necessarily are, but your MOUs will, the adjustments that were given. Say if someone was brought in above minimum for their hiring, you know, that report won't show you sort of what the city did to make any equity adjustments, but you will have all those, or you should have all those from the MOUs that we did. So that is kind of where we are. I understand, I think that the union had surveyed employees since the last time we met.
Yeah, I'd like to start there.
Yeah, so why don't we start there?
So there's been, it was actually nice to have a couple of weeks to evaluate where we're at. So this is actually a really good place to start, where we perceive the workforce to be at. Because in the end, they're going to resolve whatever this contract ends up being. So the beginning of today is going to be directly letting you know what we're hearing. So for the survey, and you know some of this already, we received 275 responses to the survey. Due to the platform we were using and the speed which we had to get it out, it wasn't possible to break out kind of any of the characteristics that would give us even further insight into this.
Okay.
However, 275 responses is a sample. It might not be the perfectly weighted scientific sample we wanted, but it's a good example nevertheless.
But you were able to break down bargaining units, right?
Only from how we sent them out.
Oh, okay.
So the first batch went out email. So we knew primarily that's the response that we get from pros and white collar, blue collar response to text messages.
Got it.
So the first day on email, 50 came in, probably no blue collar on that. It was 50-50 in that sample, and then it went higher because there were more blue collar weighing in on that.
Okay.
The survey only had one question, so we knew we had to find out a little bit more, but it was basically, do we accept the city's offer or do we keep on negotiating? You already know that final result was 60% to keep on negotiating, 40% to accept. And just to point out, Ken Welch's 60-40 victory last night was characterized as a landslide. So the results were not close.
And the sample size of the voters were small, so even if the sample size was bigger.
Well, that was it was 60,000. It was actually a great turnout.
Yeah.
So we had to find that we had to have other ways. Now, number one, it was thanks for sending out the thing like call the union, find out what's happening. Now you don't get like a ton of calls. They really got over 30 calls on that. One very interesting point on that was the number of calls from professionals who basically just don't have an idea about collective bargaining. So they had questions like, so if you don't accept it, do we get nothing? So it was kind of remedial. It was very useful to us. In fact, we signed up a couple of them. And we went through the processes that the city sent out their position. Here's our position. Then we went out from there. That's just not enough. And through stewards, organizers, et cetera, we did talk to a little over 300 other people, not just members, and spread out through the union. So the biggest was evaluations. I don't think that that's a surprise. Anytime in a workplace where there is a power imbalance, there are problems with abuse of power. You know, the supervisor holds a significant power advantage. They can make, they can make work a living hell. Now there's good supervisors and bad supervisors, but there's both. The evaluation process now gives them actually more power, explicit power to take money out of folks' pockets, to make kind of, the explosive rent increases people are paying, rising food and energy costs, even harder for people to bear. And I do have to point out, remember, even with, a proposed 3% increase, folks in real money terms are facing a pay cut with inflation around 5%. That's not opinion, that's fact. That makes the power imbalance even worse. And the power imbalance getting worse is not going to build a harmonious and cooperative workplace. There's going to be abuses in an evaluation system that doesn't take power into account. There were other problems brought up, things that we would like to actually look into. Who is going to be evaluating the bosses? It's a big question, and we didn't actually get into that a lot. There's skepticism, great skepticism out there over whether a supervisor's evaluator would even know how they function with people in the workforce. And there's no place for workers who actually are actually the people who see how a supervisor acts. There's no place for them to have any say in that evaluation system. Another big issue, the extra 1%. And we have kind of tried to talk about this. And everyone was asking this. This was interesting because it's another 1%. It's significant. The extra 1%, when people asked what specifically they needed to do to earn it, we had no answer. It's like there's nothing in there that says that. There's no specific concrete actions that could be taken to earn the extra 1%. So it looks as though, like, the supervisor has 100% absolute control over that 1%. People said, what's the fight about 1%? And that's just, it's just a matter of math. And we pointed out the difference between 2% and 3% is you're going to take years off of your time to get through the progression with that just 1%. Not only that, if you make $20 an hour, guess what? In 20 years, that 1% is equal to $20,000. So it's not an insignificant thing. It's not, and you understand this. You brought it up to me.
It compounds greatly.
So 1% does make a difference, both monetarily and in how fast you get through the progression. So just about the evaluations, and we've said this to you, we think that's something that could be navigated through with some tweaking in that system. In fact, when our team believed that we had agreed and constructed this kind of what we call an historic compromise, equal pay for equal work, equal pay being moving through your progression to max in a reasonable period of time for equal work, which is having a system set up that's fair to show that workers meet core competencies. We went out and started propagating that. We went out and we were able to have these discussions and said, look, it is a compromise. That's something they wanted. We wanted to move through this. We're stuck up on the minutia of what that means. Equal pay for equal work. But that formula is still on the table. We have confidence that we could work through that if we came back to that 3 and 3 proposal, not 3 GWIs, but 3 and 3 progression. The second biggest no was the 2% progression. And your employees are pretty smart. It's not enough to move people through their pay bands in a reasonable amount of time. Blue collar, some parts of blue collar could possibly make it. But this is the important thing. We represent everyone. We represent white collar, we represent professionals, both with bigger, more expansive pay bands. And the fact of the matter is that they probably wouldn't make it under a 2% progression rate. Finally, is this issue of having consistent and equitable pay policy for everyone. We didn't have to bring up the fact of, here's what fire and police get. Everybody is well aware of the 3.5 to 4.5, and that varies to 3.4 and a little bit up to 4.6 in certain years. And people are like, we just don't see how that's fair. We strongly believe in the same thing. Now, your argument is we need to do that to stay competitive, but how you're staying competitive in other areas is by fixing the pay gap. So pay them. If you want to stay competitive, the best thing to do is pay them so that the job is competitive. We've done that with several jobs. Beyond that, there is what we feel is a glaring equity issue here as well. Both police and fire employees, and I don't have the figures, and I'll have to get them, I guess. But I think it's fair to say it's a big majority white and a big majority male. Locking them into significant increases that are not allowed to departments that are more female, more diverse, really casts doubt on any kind of talk of equity. So I think those are the big things. That's about it. That's what workers are thinking. I believe, Kristen, that you take that into account. I don't know if everyone else does, but it should be taken into account. As for us, we got to take it into account. That's our job. That's our goal, fairness and equity for all. That doesn't mean we're at the end of the line here. I just want to make that clear. We've already come up with a couple options to you into how to structure this, the weighted progression, the ad valorem tax formula, et cetera, and you rejected those, but there's more to be made around that, and there's more we could do together. So once again, we're down for it to move forward and find a way to come to an agreement as long as the terms are fair.
Okay.
That's what we're hearing. I think we need to listen to that.
That's good. No, I appreciate the information. Appreciate you surveying the employees, talking to the employees. That helps somewhat narrow the issue. I will respond to a couple of these things just so that we kind of talk through them. But who is going to evaluate bosses? I hear you on that. There is a tool in Oracle to do 360s. We would love to get to that place for everyone, not just the bosses, for everyone.
I'm not aware of what that is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oracle is the system that these are going into. It's our personnel management
I know what that
database. You know,
360 review?
360 is an evaluation where everybody around you evaluates you. Up, down, sideways, your coworkers, other departments who you work with. Yes, we would love to.
That would go a long way.
Yeah.
With everyone, not just the leadership, but that takes, that is a step in this process that is going to take training on everybody's part. We are taking slower steps to really try to get this right. You know, I'm not even 100% confident that I'm not going to come to you in 2 years and go, you know what? This is not working for us. This is something that we're trying out too, in hopes that this can help us move forward as an organization. And 360s have been used in a variety of organizations, and sometimes they work and sometimes they fail miserably. But if we don't take really intentional steps to make sure that everybody knows the purpose and that it's carefully used, that could turn out disaster, with coworkers and other people evaluating each other.
I think there's things could go wrong in a lot of points here. But I'm really glad to hear you saying that, is that, we're thinking of all of it.
Absolutely. And especially for leadership, it's valuable, because you do have that, Well, I think for leadership and for side-to-side coworkers, cross departments, that, you have to be prepared to hear that feedback and to respond in a way that's meaningful and not just upset that you are being, receiving this criticism, right? So we have to really intentionally work on that piece, and we're not ready for it. Do we want to do it? Yes. Is it going to happen in this year? No. We are just, and Leslie Furlong and I are going through every evaluation right now, sending a lot of them back just for like little improvements, but just to try to help train every single person on how to do these correctly and give valuable feedback, how to set goals, all these things. A lot of this stuff is really new to our supervisors. So, but the good news about it, we don't have a huge sample size, but the really good news about it is that the scores that we're getting, or the percentage increase that people are getting, seem to match what the supervisors intended as well as what the employees were expecting. So that is the good piece. I think.
Say more.
Well, like for example, we'll get them in, and this goes to your extra points. How do I get a 3? Somebody has, all the yeses checked. I mean, this is an easy way to go to 3, right? You have all the boxes checked yes, all the competencies are yes, and then you have additional points at the end. Did this employee take on extra work? Yes. And tell us the examples. This employee did this project. This employee did this. When this person was out, they stepped down. So we have several additional points there. We also ask another question. Did employees exceed your expectations in any of their job competencies? Yes. The quality of this work that this employee did this year was above and beyond. Yes, in productivity, they took on more. Whatever, we're seeing that a lot of people are really taking meaningful time to demonstrate how people have gone above and beyond, and they're getting additional points for that. I go back to them and say, this looks like this was an exceptional employee, or this employee exceeded their core competencies. Is that correct? Absolutely. And they get a 3. Is it scientific? Not yet, because we're looking at every single one of these. It's not, it won't be sort of calculated by the computer until we're comfortable with that. We are matching what's expected with this tool, this sort of imperfect tool that we're working with, to make sure that it's right. Now, are there going to be some people that don't agree with their score? Probably. So far, I've seen one person that has came through that didn't meet their core competencies out of 40, probably. And I've seen far more 3s, as we anticipated. Now, again, I only have a small sample size because it's just started. So can that change? Yes. But that's kind of how it's going so far, which I'm glad for. We're glad for that. We think that in general, it's working. So as the employees in your bargaining unit start having these evaluations done and seeing sort of what their score would be, I think that'll help, it's sort of like ease some of their fears about this.
What about those people that, some of the supervisors may think that the examples that you're speaking on today, saying that falls under an all other assignments, and don't feel like there's need to give them that extra comment or saying what they're doing because it falls under all other assignments. So that person could have earned a 3, but the supervisor doesn't see it in the manner as they do that above and beyond because it's all other assignments that I assign you to do. How are you speaking to the supervisors to see that they have a different manner, mindset, per se?
Don't know that, from that piece, we're asking them a direct question on the evaluations. So mindset, is different. This is not going to be an absolutely 100% objective across the board. We all know that. It's going to be, and whether or not it's the supervisor's perception of someone not doing extra or the employee's perception, that's another issue. So, all I can say is we are spending a lot of time right now training. We're spending a ton of time right now. I'm spending a ton of time right now just going through every single one of these and trying to get feedback and making sure. And actually, after we review every one, I'm calling the evaluator or the manager or both to go through them and try to make sure that the tool again matches the expectations that they have. The supervisors and managers, all the evaluators they are expected to be evaluating people fairly as well. And that's part of their evaluation. When you said, that was kind of another thing in here, how are the bosses evaluated? Well, there's a huge chain of command in the city in general. So every person who supervises another would be doing an evaluation. I just saw one actually where the supervisor had done an evaluation and I saw the supervisor's evaluation right after that because their class dates must have matched. So the supervisors generally roll up to managers. Managers generally roll up to a senior manager or a director. Directors roll up to administrators, and so on and so forth. So, and the leadership eval, you've seen that one. It has far more competencies and expectations than the certainly any of the bargaining unit employees. So, and that's purposeful. That's intentional. I think those answer some of the questions. I know it's not
It
cut and dry.
actually does, but I mean, let me ask a couple questions.
Sure.
What's the 360 review? What makes that so difficult or so time consuming that you couldn't move to it? And this is out of ignorance, so I'm done.
Well, part of it is the system issue. Like we don't even have. We're almost to the point where this very simple form filled out by one person is in the system, and that has taken us a very long time. Or I should say us, collectively, the city, a very long time just to get this sort of simple tool into Oracle. But the bigger issue is not the system issue. It is the couple of things. One is training issue, making sure that the people giving feedback are giving appropriate and are trained on sort of what it's for, the purpose for. Then you have to evaluate, and we have to decide how much weight that's given. How much traditionally it's not given as much weight as your supervisory evaluation itself. And then it's like, well, who are the people that would give you feedback? Is it going to be a random sampling? Is it going to be everybody? There are just a lot of decision points that you have to make.
We were actually talking about that before we met. It's
Yeah.
Like, okay, so how would that work? Do you average things?
Right.
What do you?
And then the other thing is you have to make sure everybody has access to it. So, that was another thing we were really working on, is making sure our blue collar unit knows how to use Oracle. Has
We've already
there.
learned that emails don't really work with the blue collar.
Well, and that is another issue that is first and foremost on one of my equity priority lists. So that's the other issue. We got to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to meaningfully participate. So there's just a lot of decision points that are important, really important to make sure it succeeds. And, part of it's just getting everybody, I guess there's something to be said by ripping the Band-Aid off and just throwing everything out there at once. We're more, you know, I am a rip the Band-Aid off person sometimes, but for this one, I want to make sure we do it right. And so we're just being slower about it, studying it, and making sure that it gets done, hopefully, you know, in the right way. Because I just see potential, like, really bad consequences if it's not
No,
done.
I mean, and that's kind of where we started here, is that there could be abuses of this. And once again, this is not a blanket condemnation of supervision, but you know, and we know there's bad ones, probably more good ones, but
yeah,
this is fraught with that kind of dangers. That brings into question the whole concept. So if we know this is going to be imperfect, but we were willing to test it, that there's that. Or you can say, keep working on it and we're back to the 1 year or 2 year kind of agreement. Which wouldn't work if, I mean, there would be difficulties if some people were getting the progression, other people weren't getting the progression, et cetera, et cetera. So that was very clarifying. I think that actually makes a stronger argument for creating a system that could be fair. Your cautious approach, I'm applauding it. So how does that now apply back to where we're at? What do you have in mind?
Well, you know, I don't know. I go back and forth between letting your unit just see how it's panning out and seeing sort of where they would have ended up with the progression increase if they had bought into the system. Sort of like let them see how it works. Do they feel like they get a fair evaluation, or you know, are we kind of back here going, nope, everybody hated it? I go back and forth between that, and then I kind of go, especially as I'm seeing them coming through. I kind of feel like we should stick with our position of, you know, let's try it together, because it doesn't seem like it's right to have some of our employees being evaluated and getting paid, getting a raise for it, and then a big chunk of our employees not. So I don't know the right answer.
We're there kind of with you.
Right.
Though, I mean, it is the 1%. I know how costly that is. But 1% are given out. We've never had a bargaining that I can remember where it wasn't some kind of financial emergency where you came in and we came in and we always pushed it up a percentage, even in kind of hard times, which we're not in. I don't want to give you my opinion. You guys have been obviously paying attention. Comment.
And Louis had his hand up earlier.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you spoke about 360 because I've been talking about that since day one. I've been involved with organizations, more than hundreds of organizations, government, non-government, corporate, it doesn't really matter, all the way up to events. Unless we have a study for 2 to 5 years on any of this, I don't see how it's prudent to enact any of it on a wage-based program with only having one top-down, one of 3 people. So that's not crucial. It's 4,000 employees. And the big legal question is, how do we make sure, without data, it's consistent upon racial, gender, religious, different lines that we have to be very concerned about. That's where lawsuits happen. Not by us, but in real life. If they show that, one set of certain demographics, not receive desperate treatment. That's what people look at. And that's why without the data, without a few years of testing it in full, I do see a danger of that to the government, to us. And I'm trying to protect the employee also. also, if you're an employee who's asked for a vacation, not my specific district, but let's say you were turned down by your manager for vacation. They say, oh, we can't have vacation, or we're going to give you a. Are you really supposed to have a fair evaluation from that person? Then why shouldn't you be able to evaluate that? There's 4,000 employees who can evaluate people in Oracle. We should allow that. And evaluate ourselves. It is possible. We can train, okay. But that's part of the process of fairness and equity. And that's actually the mayor-elect. That's the first thing we spoke about during the Chamber of Commerce. I guess it's online. Where it was 2 mayor candidates. The first thing we spoke about was equity. And I don't really care that much about the monetary aspect. I just care about fairness, protecting minorities, and it's for people not being intimidated by their actions. It's intimidating to literally have to ask for vacation on the same people who are going to evaluate you. And you're going to say you're powerless. And we don't want that. The mayor doesn't want that. And the state doesn't want that. The government doesn't want that. We want to pursue the happiness. That is not having one person judge who you are and how good you are. It's not the one. It's you having a say also. That's just equity and fairness.
Excellent.
Conversation.
I had a question. You spoke about doing feedback on the ones you've already done, speaking with the supervisors and the managers. Have you spoken with the employees, the bargaining units that were getting these done?
I have not spoken with the employees.
Good.
And
I was gonna say, you're gonna get their side of it.
Yeah.
Management side of it. But you're not gonna hear how the employee feels about it. You know what I mean? So if this supervisor feels that you did not go above and beyond, that employee may have done things that he considers himself above and beyond. But like Robin was saying, that supervisor or manager may say, shoot, it's part of your job. It's part of your job to stay late and fulfill the city needs.
right.
And you may not know this person volunteered. You know what I mean? It may have been, hey, I need someone to stay late. This person, man, woman, whatever, is raising their hand going, I'll do it. I think that's huge. Like if you're going to do feedback on it, you got to give full circle of feedback.
Yeah, and maybe we will try to do that sample wise. I will tell you, we are, I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, but we are maxed out. We've never had so many grievances in our office. We've never had so many investigations in our office ever. I have literally 3 of us, maybe, on good days. We have so much else going on that's valuable feedback, and I will take that back, and we will do our best to try to do some sampling of that as well. But we are maxed out.
But I would
Which
say-
is sad, because we actually have some really good things that we're trying to work on, and we just can't.
Well, the one thing that actually impressed me the most about talking to folks about this is the morale does not seem to be good. I think that plays out in a number of grievances, and it plays out in a number of ways. The one thing I didn't mention throughout this was, I don't know how many people said to me, I don't want to be called a hero. I want to have enough money to fill up my gas tank.
It's been a couple of really hard years for people.
So it has been hard years. And go ahead, I don't need to.
My question was on the last evaluation that we came up with a couple of years ago. There was opportunity for feedback from the employee on the evaluation, correct? Where you filled it out yourself and you pretty much stated out what you did and what new tasks you took on and things of that nature. So there, and then you and your supervisor.
Those same discussion questions, especially what your major accomplishments were, are still on this evaluation.
Right, so I was saying to Pat, there's some feedback where the employee get a chance to speak. I mean, because I was the first person in my unit that had it, although we were like scratching our head because it was, our supervisor wasn't trained. They said they didn't receive any kind of training on this new for company evaluation. They were like, well, Rodriguez gonna wing this one how you feel about anything that you feel that you took on. And you're actually supposed to put it in there, supposed to type it in there.
Again, I'm glad that's there, but I have an issue with that, because even with the last review that we did, there was a lot of that going on, and I got a lot of feedback. It didn't happen to me personally, but I got a lot of feedback from coworkers where they were saying things and writing things down and have put in for the supervisor to type into the system, and there, we can't put that in. We gotta put something different. And it's like, well, what's going on here? Now it's, now it's not factual to what that employee was wanting to say. Now it's what the supervisor feels like the employee wants to say.
Yeah.
And I brought that up to my management, and I don't know what was done with it.
The employees can always put a self-evaluation in their personnel file, always. Now, in the past,
Just have them do an amendment to their.
You're not, a lot of the blue collar workers.
Right.
don't do that.
Can you do that with a hammer, or do you need a wrench?
Right, they're just not, and we don't, the computer access is limited for us to begin with. Computers we do now are meant for processing work orders and, creating jobs and stuff like that. It's not meant for someone to stand there. But yeah, those reviews weren't tied to anything directly, so as far as pay or anything like that. But it just, even then, if it's not tied to anything directly, they aren't willing to put in honest answers because it may make them look bad, the department look bad, so on and so on. You kind of get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Anyone else with comments? We're kind of in the same spot.
Are you all getting to roll out the training on digital value with the supervisor amendment yet? Or you-
they have been trained and trained and trained. A couple years ago, we trained and trained and trained. This form, not on this specific form, this form is as easy as it gets to fill out. The process of evaluating based on the competencies and these discussion questions and how to set goals, oh my goodness. We spent a lot of time training on that. On this specific form, no, because it's 50 times easier than the last set of forms that we trained on, and it's the same stuff, it's just consolidated onto one form and much shorter. So to some extent, they're correct that we did not go out and teach everybody how to use this form, but did we go out and spend a lot of time training on those competencies, telling them, get ready, these are gonna show up on your next form, we're not having you check the box yet, but we're gonna have you check the box in a couple years, and here's the discussion questions, here's how you set goals. Yes, ton of time. The new forms, we sent out pretty quickly, because we were kind of talking about attaching increases to them, and we said, okay, let's get them out by the start of the fiscal year. These were way easier than our prior process, so this should be no problem for people. And what I've sent out multiple times is, if you need in your group needs training, call me. I've sat in on a couple of meetings, staff meetings. I've done one-on-one training with people. I just put it out there that if you feel like you're not ready for this, to call me. We've left it open like that because we just simply didn't have time to go around, and we assumed that once people looked at the form, they go, oh, this is not anything that is challenging. And I'm assuming that your supervisor probably didn't have any problem with it when they're going through and answering.
It took us a couple days to get it. It was when it came up, it was out of line. It was trying to line boxes to type in. It was jumping all over the place. I don't know if it was our computer or it was the program which happened, but it was a couple of days. And another thing was goals. They were at first they wasn't comfortable with putting goals out because like, you might not get your 1%. I said I don't get a 1% on mine, so it doesn't. You can put a a goal down,
Yeah, there's
I
no
mean,
scoring on the goals.
I said, there's always, I said, with goals, I look at goals, I was telling my supervisor, I look at goals, there's always room for improvement. There's always something you can, you know, someone sees different that you can work on. So I don't have a problem with putting a goal there, but it's like, it was just goal that just continue to stay on top of your cases. You know, there was nothing we could put in there. So she was like, I don't want to, but I need to know. So therefore, next time, if there's somebody else, that the other ladies in my unit are not might stop. So she was trying to feel comfortable. What do I put so I don't keep them from getting their extra? Because they do certain things that they're not required to do, not in their job description, which they do for officers. But one may, like I said, one may say that's, you know, anything above and that's a little catchphrase.
No,
And all
you know,
of it.
I think the supervisors do need a lot of training. They need a lot more training, about a lot of things. This, you know, the fact that this is exactly what we don't want to happen. We don't want supervisors, evaluators to be looking at the evaluation, trying to figure out how somebody will or won't get a raise. So we want people to look at it and honestly fill it out and honestly evaluate somebody. If they do that, we want to make sure that it also matches the expectations that fall with it. So what your supervisor is doing is exactly what we don't want people to do. So I'm telling you.
Well, and
we don't do
there's the other side of this is, and this is meaningless, but obviously I can't give the names, but, you know, I've spoken to two managers, one a friend of mine, one's a friend of Chris. As soon as this came out, they got with me. And they're like, number one, it caused kind of havoc
Yeah.
out there. Number two, they're like, I'm just gonna mark everything yes, this is too much work.
I know. No,
But
I hear you.
I mean,
hear
so
what
there's
you're
all
saying.
this, it is not a
Yeah.
perfect system, it may never be a perfect system. However, we were willing to kind of push through, that was the trade-off. That's the difference between 2 and 3%.
Yeah.
Is make it significant for people to move, make it as good as the progression that we had 2 years ago. And we'll get through that.
Yeah, it's just not, the progression that we had 2 years ago just isn't sustainable. And, you know, I'm with you too. I go back and
How,
forth.
hold on, why isn't it sustainable? Because it was based upon ad valorem. So when money comes in, money goes out.
Well, and.
There is no loss.
Well, there is because it compounds, that's one thing. And for another thing, you know, it's like.
All
any-
raises compound, so you know.
Yeah, but I mean, like, just think about big business, you know, when times are good, they dole out all sorts of money to their employees. When times are bad, what happens? They lay off a decent amount of their workforce.
Didn't you have like
City
a
doesn't do
chart
that.
that you had filled out saying this is at 2%, this is at 3%? Didn't that mean something? Like that was like a goal of working through your progression? Or, I mean, what was the point of, like when we first started, you had like those 2 pages.
The point was just to look at it and see what my point was, and maybe I made a mistake even showing it, was just to look and see in the pay bands what was for my education too, just to see, you know, how long does it really take to go through these pay bands?
Forever.
When we're just doing GWIs. Yeah, it will, if the pay band keeps moving.
You'll never move to the.
All right, you'll never move through the pay band.
GWI.
Right.
Right.
It just keeps growing further
Well,
away.
you just keep losing money every year until we all have to move into city buildings and live here.
Well, no, I mean,
Raising
general wage
machines and
increases,
houses.
you're not losing money, you're not moving through the pay band.
Okay.
The pay bands keep moving with you.
As everything around me goes up 33% a year and I'm making,
Well, that's a different issue.
2, then I'm moving backwards actively. Yeah, I mean, at that point, we're all actively being removed from the city slowly because we cannot afford to be here anymore.
But if we gave you, I'm just saying, that's not a GWI issue.
No,
We
no.
could give you a 7% GWI and you're still not gonna move through the pay band.
Correct.
No, exactly.
So-
I need to go back a little bit, just answer this question. So, like I told you, my evaluation was the first one in my unit, but just say, when you all, decide to roll this out, the week before you roll it out, a coworker, you, was evaluated on the old system, now how would that affect her with the?
That her class date would have been before the fiscal year started. This is just starting the new fiscal year, and yes, it was rushed to get it out,
We
trust
had
me.
already started the fiscal year, we just had,
Her class date should have and would have fallen within the last fiscal year. Check it,
I will think.
that's likely what happened.
I mean, if it didn't, then what, how will you all go back and?
Then we would have sent it back and said, use the new one, or we should have, that's what we've been doing. We've only had a couple, maybe one of those, somebody used the whole form, which is actually a lot more complicated. But, you know, to your point, yes, you know, and people, you know, I say this is what we don't want the supervisors to do and the managers to do, and, you know, part of this is, it is just another tool. It's just another tool to give people feedback and to, you know, the goal is toward, you know, this is not just a tool to give people a raise or not. It's to give feedback, to get feedback, to improve, to, you know, do all those things. And to lay out expectations, you know, common expectations of what the city expects, and to, you know, a lot of those are based on treating each other better, that kind of thing. So, but I also hear, you know, from Rick's, when you talk about, you know, the managers going, well, nobody's gonna give anybody help, that's too much. Yeah, such is management. You know, it's a lot of work.
No, well, you're gonna have the opposite end too, though. You're gonna have the managers, supervisors that have sore feelings for someone. They're gonna give them more no's than yes. Just because it's a,
Yeah.
it can be used as a tool now to punish because it is tied to equity.
Yeah.
And
It's not perfect by any means, and, is it worth, we're trying it out, is it worth it?
Do I feel like I would excel, even though I feel like I excel at work every day? Absolutely not, because I am the one talking with people and saying things they don't want to hear, and, you know, and
We have said some things that people don't want to hear, I will tell you
Yes.
that much.
I agree with
Including me.
I agree with that as well. But have I really crossed any lines or done anything so bad where I wouldn't deserve a 1% raise? You know, that extra 1%? I can believe so.
And even the people who despise you are willing to say, excellent mechanic, man, you want to get your fire engine out of here the right way, go talk to the pain in the ass.
Amen.
So I mean, which is what,
Well,
I mean, I
there's
hate
more
to say
than,
it,
yeah,
we
there's-
really lose focus a lot on what any of us are doing here.
well,
What the purpose of our jobs are.
there's more than just being a mechanic
Absolutely.
to being a city employee,
Absolutely.
being a pain in
Being
the
a
ass. is not-
community builder and striving for change, and to make a better world for everyone. Nobody ever likes that guy. He's been assassinated and we speak highly of him. Meanwhile, excellent mechanic, excellent part of his work environment. Desperately tries to make everybody happy. Not the guy who probably his boss wants to get raised.
See, I'm okay with not getting the extra percent, but I would like to where if I do pass my Common Core, it to be a reasonable percent. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I'm okay. You don't have to tell me I'm excellent above and beyond. I know what I do as far as my work performance. But I just need to be fair.
I don't know, Rick, I don't know that we're in the same place. You know, I'm hearing from your group, we're not. In terms of using this eval at all. So, I don't know.
I mean, you're getting a taste for it, and that's why I'm saying, look, it's admittedly, everyone says this isn't perfect, it isn't all worked out yet, et cetera, et cetera. That would seem to imply that maybe it goes to a 1 year. Not a proposal, I'm thinking out loud.
Okay.
Mhm.
That it would be 1 year, 3% GWI, and the 3% progression for being like a guinea pig,
Mhm.
for like going
Mhm.
through the process. Step 3, we're really stuck on the 3. Say, you know, doing a 1-year agreement actually makes real sense to perfect this, give the 3, but people, once you get your evaluation back, say, damn, I made it.
Mhm.
That's when trust begins to build. So if you really want that to go through, maybe that idea of 1 year at 3 progression accomplishes something for both of us.
Right, which is where we've been for a long time. You know, and I don't, you know, I don't disagree with your rationale. It's simply the amount at this point. So it's nothing different than where we've been for.
No, it seems as though that the real problem is the 3 in the progression, even though, once again, I didn't know that everyone knew police and fire got that. You cannot say we're trying to be competitive. You can just give them, like I said, change their pay band. Then you're way more competitive. So nothing is making sense on the money to me. Convince me, because nothing is. The city is not in problems. Like you said, they gave back $8 million in taxes. That's not a sign of being fiscally weak. We know what the projections are for ad valorem tax for the next 5 years. So that, you know, I don't know who's saying this about money. I don't know if it's budget. I don't know if it's the mayor. I do know a new administration is coming in. We're just not being convinced that it's a monetary issue.
And
Which we were. Last year, he said, hey, everything's falling apart. Can we like agree that?
right,
So it's never been like we haven't agreed when there was an issue of being fiscally irresponsible. We've always been that way. I don't think you can say that about your other units.
right, and you know, we're looking again at a long-term plan, a long-term budget, a long-term, you know, where we are and where we start from, and usually where we kind of end are related to, well, a variety of things, but really at this point, it's looking at other agencies, how we compare, looking also at our citizenry and how we are, you know, not only just other agencies, but just the outside community and the raises that we're giving our employees as compared to, you know, what our citizens are getting and what not in general, but when you have a group of citizens struggling to make ends meet and not getting raises and not getting per city.
I agree 100%. However, the current average of wage increases is over 4% now. You do know that, right?
From
Just nationwide.
nationwide.
It's like if you work at Burger King, guess how much your pay went up? You know, 10%.
Hope so, their wages were.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So to
Extremely
say
low.
when everybody else in the community is getting much bigger raises than 3%, 3% does not cover the cost of inflation. It's, you know, I mean, you know, maybe it's disingenuous to say it's a pay cut, but in real money terms, it is. So if this is where we're stuck, I don't know how to get out of this.
I don't know either. You know, we proposed something different as it relates to a different GWI, but if your real goal is 6%, which seems like that is the real goal, not 3%, 6%, then
No, it's 3% in progression.
in progression and 3% GWI. If I can get you the 3% in progression, but we've got to back down off of the GWI a little bit.
Like police and fire.
I'm not,
Yeah, you cannot justify it. That's what I'm saying.
I
How,
can't-
you can't talk about equity when there's not an internal equity. That is not a being competitive issue. Be competitive, raise their pay band. Pay them more money right from the get-go. Why don't you do that?
I don't know why we don't pay police and fire right off the get-go. Maybe they will propose that this next year. I don't
But all I'm
know.
saying is it's not fair, and if you can make a case right now that that's fair, then maybe we'll listen.
But how would raising their pay bands be different than? It's a different.
No, you keep
visual.
saying it's a competitive, that only just keeping us competitive. You're losing from the bottom, as you already told me. You're doing nothing to make that competitive, to get new people hired in at the bottom. You're not proposing to increase the starting rate, are you?
For police and fire?
No, for us.
Yes, I mean, with a GWI increase, that raises the bottom. Is that what
Okay.
you're talking about?
All right.
I mean.
So is that
that's-
being competitive when you can't hire somebody to cut grass?
I haven't heard that we haven't been able to hire, but
Look at the job postings for the last 4 weeks. The same jobs come up.
Mhm.
They're not the high end. Some of them, of course, are high end.
Yeah.
They're low end. Which
Oh, our
indicates
job-
to me you can't hire people.
Our job board is full, not necessarily because we can't hire, because we have, like everybody else, sort of so many people retiring, so many people who are actually just a lot of retirements. And of course, fiscal year start, we always have a lot of positions, but yeah, we have a ton of jobs on a job board right now. And there, to your point too, there are some, and it cycles around, which jobs are harder to hire because of certain factors going on with the private sector. Competitions or like water with schools and people cycling through, and some of the blue collar jobs where now everybody's going to college for this, and we don't have as many people entering our apprentice programs. I mean, it cycles around depending upon what's going on. So we will have some of those cases. And to your point, at the lower end, I don't know. I know that this city raised its minimum wage, far before all these other agencies did. And
We know.
We remember.
Proposal.
Yeah, right. And look
I think
where
that
we
happened
ended
during
up.
bargaining, didn't it?
Yeah, so there you go. I mean,
So
we're way ahead, which is good. You're
basically,
ahead.
I mean, so to get back to it, so the issue is the 2 or the 3. That's really it, because we're willing to go with, your answers were pretty good on how this system can actually be fairer and work better.
And we can do the 3, but we have to back off a little on the GWI, and I don't know that your unit's willing to do that. If they are, I can give you a proposal.
Because still, you have an issue where there's 1,000 other people in the city
Mhm.
who are privileged. Mostly white, mostly male. But only them and them alone have that set up so it's 3-5, 4-5, etc.
Which if
There's
you-
just no way you can justify that.
Have you looked around at all the other agencies with police and fire to see if we are right on par?
Does that mean that other agencies aren't racist, institutionally racist? Of course they are.
I'm just saying from the standpoint of competitiveness.
Then
in that
raise their
industry.
wages. That's how you stay competitive. Why hasn't there been, like with these engineers that you propose, once again, another situation that just kind of, they're not really talking about equity. Here comes engineers. We're just going to impose this MOU, even though we were told about 2 outstanding MOUs where Robin is at, and they said, we can't because you're in negotiations. But when it's white privileged males, oh, we're just imposing it. Can you give us a reason for that?
I think you guys said you weren't gonna sign it because we were in negotiation.
No, we had a whole bunch of questions that we sent. over.
Those were
We sent
legitimate
public
questions about
records
equity.
requests.
Oh, well, we can answer those. If we're gonna do records requests, we can answer those.
No, I know, but you imposed it without having meaningful discussions.
We had.
We asked questions.
And you said, no, we're just gonna do it. You can do a public records request if you want those answers. Why do we
Which
have
has
a
never
contract?
happened in the past.
Like, why?
But Robin's first answer was, we're not gonna sign it, we're in negotiations.
But in the meantime, we can discuss.
Because she was told that about other
I said,
MOUs.
We're not gonna sign because we need more information right now. We're not gonna sign it. We'll review it after negotiation. That's what
Look, I didn't mean to get sidetracked there, but it seems, I am a little frustrated though, and I do not doubt, Charles, either you, Kristen, or your sincerity about being equitable. Don't doubt it one bit. However, you guys don't make the decisions on this. You were clearly told, move those engineers through no matter what. Whether it's right or wrong, or moral, or equitable. So how are we to trust that you really want, I do trust you guys, but you don't make decisions. So I want to know who to go to talk to, bring that person here so we can have that discussion. Who is it?
Decision to move things through like that is gonna be probably the department directors along with Chris, because he's the HR director, so. he's
Right,
gonna
so
be-
Chris is making the decisions on the 2 and 3.
Well, no, not on the 2 and the 3.
Who is?
With the MOUs, with
Mhm.
changing pay bands or with,
So I'm
kind of
just
thing is
trying
gonna
to
be-
identify who it is. I mean, is it the mayor?
with regard to.
Yeah, to say we
the
don't
bar
want people to
rates,
to move through the progressions with 3%. Whose decision is that?
That decision is, up through administration and, we have. Now, I will tell you, I haven't spoken to the mayor personally very recently. I talked to Chris, we worked through chain of command just like everybody else.
Well, I
City. But when we initially were at a point where we were talking about kind of feeling like, I think we were all at
Yeah.
a place where, well, at least where we were with the last offer that we made versus the offer that you made with the 3 and the 3. The mayor has seen that proposal.
Okay.
And then that was, I don't know when that was, but
Mhm.
it's a while ago. A few months ago.
I was just gonna ask, is the budgetary concerns, is it more leaning towards the immediate concerns, or is it really focused all on this compounding
It's a
into perpetuity?
long-term, sustainable approach
Okay.
that this administration has taken. So it's not an immediate concern, although the budget was passed.
Right, right.
What was given in the budget was just the 3%
Right.
GWI, so we're finding the rest.
Okay.
I say we,
Mhm.
not Kristen and Lori, but
No, but that happens,
city-
that happens all the time.
yeah, the city's
The
finding
budget
the
is
rest of that money.
fungible.
But yeah, it really was based on a long-term sustainable approach, looking at competitiveness with other agencies, looking at our citizens and our tax base, taking all those things into consideration. And, our benefits, all of it plays
Yeah.
in terms of our whole compensation package. I don't think nobody that I know of, takes a look at this and goes, oh, we're gonna get them this year, we're only gonna get them.
Feels like it.
That's sad, it's sad.
I don't think
that
that's,
we're looking at
that's,
benefits,
I don't
but-
think that's it either, but I also don't think that people really grasp if you set out a chart and say, here's what it looks like at 2%. Here's how long you have to go. And it's an unreachable goal, particularly in pros and some white collar positions. We say, here's 3, everybody can get through in a reasonable time. That's more of the issue to us. That's more of the issue to me. I don't know who the people making these decisions say, oh, well, yeah, we don't want them to go through that fast. or, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, the people looking at it from that perspective are looking at it more from, not from a moving through the pay band within a certain number of years. Although, I relayed that as the union's priority, that you all are looking at that. Almost, it's not a step-based approach, but looking at it in sort of that way. So it's, if I had a brilliant idea that I think would capture this, I would let you know. I'd be more enthusiastic about trying to figure that out if I felt like the evaluation was being perceived in a better light. But
It would be helpful to all of us, absolutely, but still, it does not resolve the question of reasonable time getting through the day. I guess we should caucus.
Yeah. I got a question, like over at the sanitation department. They keep wondering, well, the city's saying this and that. But you got the sanitation department and the water, they're bringing in a lot of revenues for the city. And they wonder why they keep saying, well, they don't figure out why they're not. They get aggravated about the raises, they have families, they work through this whole pandemic, there's a lot going on. Jeopardize their lives because we out there dealing with all that. So that's what I do.
We should caucus for just a
But
Okay, we've been sitting in here for however long that was, doing a lot of what we usually do, right? Just like, but actually, towards the end of that, it turned towards making an actual proposal that we think there may be some interest in from you.
okay,
We're not ready to make it right now. There's still little things that we need to work that out. We should set another date. But actually, I'm feeling kind of good about that. It's like, okay, that was like a great idea. So
I think it was good.
I don't want to bring it up right now because there's still some
no problem.
agreements that we have to.
I think it was good conversation.
It was
Really
very
was.
good. By the way, you guys, and this is, I've said this before, there's a lot of trust level here for you guys.
I appreciate that.
When you say, yes, we want to do the 360, I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So there might be a little language we might need to do around that. So there's little aspects of this, but what it does, it may take care of the money problem. So that's, I'll leave you with that. And we can work out a date.
Do you want to do that now, or you want to take a look at your schedule and email me?
Yeah, let's do that, because I know,
Okay.
I have to have a crown on my kids next week. We'll figure it out, okay?
No problem. And I want to also kind of leave you with this more positive thing, that I am trying to have the invitation to participate in our inclusivity council done
Oh,
by
nice.
maybe next week. I know, Louis, I got you.
Wait a minute, we don't want you on there.
yeah,
There will be a process, there will be a process, but start with asking for volunteers, and get that going and started. So I will, once we kind of have that worked out in terms of what the flyer's gonna look like, make sure you guys have it to spread it around. Because we want to have a good representation on that committee.
Absolutely.
From the standpoint of all levels and, as diverse in all ways as possible. But that's good news. We're moving forward, and that will be another mechanism by which some of these things can be, taken a look at in terms of, your concerns, all concerns about equity. So that council will be started from the ground up and set forth its own strategic plan for whatever it's gonna work on. There's no
That's awesome.
preconceived, like, well, this council's gonna do this. The council's gonna decide what they're gonna work on. At least that's what our perspective is now. That's how we're gonna set it up. So we'll need some really thoughtful participants on that, people who are willing to put some work, put some work into it, I hope.
Yeah.
And then we will let you know when we're starting, but that's the plan. And then we have a report that will be released as well about the study,
Mhm.
so you get a copy of that. And there are things on there, so one of them is the Equity Council, which we had planned on even before the study was done. It was kind of like, let's do the study so the council has something to start from, a framework, kind of where we are, where we've come, where we still need to go. But, there are some other things on there.
The USF study, right?
What's that?
The USF study?
No, not USF study. It was Inclusivity Inc. did
Oh,
our,
sorry. Okay. Yeah.
yeah. But USF has some great stuff.
Yeah, I was just wondering about. Yeah.
To use some great training materials out there to use too. So that's all good. I think that type of thing will only help to build the trust.
Yeah.
As long as the council takes it seriously and we use it.
I have a feeling they will.
I mean, I wouldn't anticipate somebody volunteering who didn't really want to truly be on there. So we just have to make sure we can get representation, that really is, like I said, diverse in all as many ways as we possibly can, to just get a good representation of voices there.
You can send that flyer out when you have that. That'd be really helpful. We'll
Yep.
send that out to folks and do what we can to support.
Well, look, I thought today was actually good. It actually opened up. We felt it opened up some possibilities.
Okay, good.
I just want to make sure that when you're at this stage of negotiations, you want to make sure that it's total consensus, at least from our side.
Yeah.
Okay. Understood. Let me know about the next date, and
Will do.
I will try to also sort of compile more data that I can tell you about the evals when we come back to.
That would be
That
great.
would be really nice. I mean, I'm, look, I know we can always come in and look at those evaluations, but number one, I do trust you guys. If you put a report together, just hearing that 40 came in and one didn't make it. Just knowing what departments were surveyed, those kinds of things, makes it a little more insightful. Like, we couldn't actually put that together for you, but thanks. I'm sure at some point we're on take a look.
Okay. Very good.
And, did you want to talk about,
You?
Yeah, me.
Looks like we need to.
How do you feel about
Yeah.
You don't want to do that now. You want to do that later.
I have until I have another meeting at 4.
What time is it?
It's 10 till 4.
Oh, I'll set that up.
Okay.
Just from what you said, I know there's some friction going on. You've been there. He's our chief